All video games apply sound design in their games, more intentional than not. But what is sound? It's something that we hear all around us, yet not many take the time to stop and hear the things around our environment. We hear many things, yet we don't take the moment to stop and listen to a world where we are constantly moving at a pace where no one can catch up. What is sound design? It's the creation of sound in an environment or world, allowing those experiencing it feel a sense of immersion in a game that they play. The concept is extremely important in making a game. A world created in games won't feel as impressive with high-end quality graphics or creative stylic charm without the support of sound effects, music, and ambient sound to bring life to a world. Sound itself won't detail all of the information, but combined with visuals, context, and environment help parse details where the latter cannot do without the former. I wanted to create this video to look into some of the games and analyze some of the scenes through sound, with the goal of understanding how sound design works in order to analyze and create sounds in game design. In general, audio is used in an intentional way to give information to the players. The action the player takes, the ambience where the player is located. These all fall under creating a design intended to tell the player any information that they are in, which sound assists. Game sounds can be categorized in many ways: diegetic, non-diegetic, ambient, interactive, dynamic. Diegetic sounds are sounds that both the player and the world hears, spells, interacting with objects. Non-diegetic sounds are sounds only heard by the player. This ranges from user interface and music. All with the same goals in mind, making sure the player stays engaged with the game they are playing and creating a world that is believed to be real to the eyes of the player. How designers make use of sound is dependent on how the game is perceived in the perspective of the designers as well as the genre the game may fall under. Making sounds for a horror game? Rising tension through dissonance or silence with heavy emphasis on ambient sounds to consistently put the player on edge. A platforming game would have music based off of the environment with sounds made by the player based off of the actions they take. Creating games through a genre is a simple yet effective way for designers to have a starting point to build off of. Super Mario Wonder oozes with charm and style, and the music properly reflects that. There are several things that change based on the player's action or current condition. The first level's music on its own is very bright, a new world to explore with a wondrous journey ahead for the player. The overworld music is the first thing the player will listen to when they boot up the first level. Immediately, the player will naturally walk around the level, getting their bearings with controls, movements, and the overall environment. The music is light, bringing fun to the level. Percussion rhythm keep the feel going to the song, acquire singing the melody and harmony to match with the music. The moment the player stops moving, the music follows suit, dropping part of the percussive hi-hats to reflect the stillness of the player. It's like the music is telling the player to take in the environment and world before continuing, keeping the world steady yet still in motion. It is a small detail that may be difficult to notice, but all the more entices the creativity and appreciation that is developed for the game. As the player progresses through the level, they will come across a new power-up, the elephant fruit. When a player enters the elephant form, the choir takes a step back from the melody and the trombone and marimba enters in place of the choir, smoothly transitioning or fading between the two instruments. The elephant form sets a sound identity to the player. That sound identity is the trombone and marimba, which I'll be referring to the trombone to simplify things. There is no level or song in the game where the song features a trombone, unless the player themselves are an elephant form. The elephant form is a trombone and the trombone is the elephant form. The player identifies the link between the power-up and the music, which allows them to identify it the next time they pick up the power-up again. Each world ends the battle with Bowser Jr., tasking the player with defeating him with different layers on platforming, obstacles to spice up each encounter with him. What remains consistent is Jr.'s use of the Wonder Flower that switches the physical environment, the player, or himself in some way. When he does trigger his ability, the music follows his pace. The first Wonder phase showcases his ability to change the platforms, or characters in ways that sometimes the player does not have control over. When he has one more hit left to be defeated, he becomes more desperate, and the music reflects this desperation with fast, almost jittery pace. The music tells the player that Bowser Jr. is in control of the field, even if his last desperate attempt to take the player down as best of his abilities. The final level and battle against Bowser combines everything in adaptive music. Before going into the level, you can hear the music while selecting the level, entering the sinister vibes on what the stage will foretell. Being a musical-based level, the level is moving to the rhythm of the music. The enemies will react to the music, which the player can learn and react to the actions of the enemies. Taking this information subconsciously, the battle against Bowser challenges the players to fight against him with the music in mind, as Bowser specifically attacks on the 4th beat of the measure, while the player can attack Bowser on the 4th beat as well. This is shown visually and auditorially on the beats and arrows on the platforms. This exact mechanic is introduced right before the boss, showing the player to listen to the music and jump in time. Different levels of adaptive music are in play here. Not only is the game going with the pace of the music along with the reactions and attacks the boss makes and beats, the player in turn has to react to the music and the boss. Their whole body feels the tempo, energy, and see the visuals responding to the actions. Game genre is not the only thing that should be considered in sound design. The space in which the player is located needs to be considered. What is the space I'm referring to? Is the player at an open area where nothing but the grassy plains around them? Or maybe in a damp cave where the surface feels untouched by outside forces? In a building symmetrically arranged in a functional structure with objects and people around the area? What are the walls made out of? Maybe the player is falling out of the sky for no apparent reason, and not from their own mistakes they took themselves in? These environments affect the way sound travels between the sound source and the player, and as such, sound designers need to consider the psychoacoustics to make the player believe they are inside of the space and experiencing it in real time. Sound is used meaningfully and deliberately. Take a look at some sounds in Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. The designers of Tears of the Kingdom intended to calculate the psychoacoustics and sounds in real time with the moment-to-moment gameplay. The developers themselves, when talking about the sound design at GDC, the Game Developers Conference back in 2024, to create a sound in a proper environment, they had to understand the physics behind the way sound interacts with objects around the environment and how that feedback returns to the player. Suppose Link, the character the player is controlling, and in conjunction the camera, is currently out in an open field, where no trees or walls are in view of the player. The sound designers showed some of the examples of their sound engine in action. They show what the player will hear when they're interacting with an object. For example, the player pulling the bowstrings will only be the sound that is directly coming from them. We will look at Link with the same scenario in a cave. Since the environment is more enclosed and condensed with rocks all over, the same sound will be very different from the environment of the open air. The materials the caves are used allows the sounds to bounce around sporadically, and the player will hear both the direct sound coming towards them and the reverb on the wall surfaces. So the space in the world is being considered in making sounds feel more real to the player. What are the cases in object making sounds behind certain others? In this footage, I have a wheel rumbling in this area. Take a listen to when I move the character inside and behind the object. You hear the audio as normal, the rumbling sound of the mechanisms rolling. When the player goes behind the wall, the sound gets more muffled, and sound fairly distant. Again, the game is playing with the environment around them to give the player a sense of space to what is around them, even if it is not directly visible to them. Another interesting detail on this is the camera's position, determining if the player will hear the audio as they perceive the game through that camera and not through a link. Why is this important? In Tears of the Kingdom's case, a sandbox open world consistently requires a change in acoustics for an environment that fits to the current location of the player. Spatialization in open world games are vital in making sure the player subconsciously understand they are in a location fit to the specific environment. Simply put, audio information is one of the most important to the player in a moment-to-moment gameplay. If the player maintains engagement with the game, the more immersion the player is experiencing, which is vital to any game. Sound-based systems are important with maintaining immersion for any form of gameplay. According to Ian Thompson in his section of doing research in sound design called the Soundscape approach, he describes soundscape as the way the environment of sound is being perceived by an individual or a group of people, which results in the individual or a community to link a specific object to certain sounds. This can lead to a general familiarity of certain sounds. Likewise, if there's a sound that is foreign to an individual group, there's a bit of uncertainty or panic in the group. Barry Trurox, a researcher in soundscapes, coined this term acoustic community. As an example, there's a peaceful town. Everyone knows one another in their daily routine. Bikers ring their bells as a simple gesture of hello. Birds are chirping, singing to each other. These are all part of the acoustical community within this town. The sounds are familiar with the groups and are part of their daily lives. Unfamiliar sounds can lead to panic and disruption within the community. The unfamiliar sound could vary depending on the community, but it could be a simple instrument playing something strange or a faraway rocket launching. This concept is very similar to how players in games are able to associate certain sounds in a game. Looking into Destiny as an example, a first-person looter shooter, there are many different sounds that are very unique, particularly in the weapons and in the subclass, an elemental power that the player can wield. With subclass, they are categorized in 5 different elements: Solar, Void, Arc, Stasis, Strand. Solar is fire. The sound effect is best associated with heat or fire-based properties. Arc is lightning. You will hear electricity-based properties when you are near the source. Stasis is ice, which can be heard from a cold, icy sound. Void and Strand are unique, since these are things mostly in the world of Destiny, or things that can't be heard within our own world. They have to be sonified in order for players to hear and use them. As such, in-game, Void has a vacuuming-like sound while Strand has a sound of slimy strings. Each element is distinct from one another, which allows players to have experienced the game for long enough to distinguish the difference between them. A game-wide association of soundscape occurs through the gameplay. Each sound is linked to specific elements or tools within a player's arsenal, eventually to a point where these sounds are natural within the game as a new player playing through the game. Diving deeper into the layers of elemental powers, there are 3 classes in the game: Hunter, Titan, and Warlock. Each class is capable of utilizing these elements in different ways, each with different sounds associated with each class's elements. Looking at one element Solar, characters' ultimate made to be distinct from one another allows players, especially those who are familiar with the game, to identify and adjust their combat approach. The Hunter's solar abilities revolve around being a sharpshooter, taking shots with deadly precision. One of their super abilities, the ultimate flaming weapon, incinerating a person into oblivion. The Titan's solar ultimate is a hammer, tossing a burning hammer to their enemies, destroying everything in its path. Warlock's solar ultimate is a flaming sword, slicing the air, projecting a crescent flame to the target they seek to destroy. Each class has a distinct sound for each ultimate cast. Hunters with radiant gun priming, Titans have sound of metal clashing, and for Warlocks, a sound of a sword slicing across a metal surface. So there are different ways in applying sound depending on the emphasis on the game. Through soundscape, soundification, adaptive music, and realistic environmental sounds. I want to apply the things I've researched and make my own audio of what I learned throughout my years in studying my major and the ongoing research. My goal as a designer is to create a sonic environment through audio where players can feel immersed in their game. The thought and design process is as shown. 1. What is it that I am working with? What are the tools that I have, physical or digital, to create audio, and how can I work with them? 2. Creating a sound that is unique but purposeful. Creativity is everything. I want to make sure the sounds I make are meaningful and original, but without limits there is no meaning. Setting a clear purpose will set boundaries and have a clear direction on the design. 3. Feel. What is it that I want to make people think or feel when creating a sonic environment? Is it fear? Power? Emptiness? Does it make a person think in a way that this certain thing is the way it feels based on the way it sounds? Is there an emotional backing to a certain situation? 4. What parts am I capturing? With this particular example, I am taking footage and adding sounds to the footage. Different spaces are present, but not everything needs sound. Is there a particular part of the space that I want the player to have an attention to? And 5. Does it feel immersive? Of course, my goal is to make the player feel engaged. If the design helped the player be immersed in the game, it means I have succeeded in creating a design that achieved my goal. I will show the game that I used to incorporate my sounds into, and you will hear my explanation on some of the parts in the result. This is Born and Bred, an RPG game with a similar style to that of the classic Paper Mario games. I don't know the story, as I was not too interested in playing the game, but there will be two different scenes. Both scenes are different in how sounds are presented. One focused on the environments with the world around the character, and the other focused on the gameplay, the combat. I want to do two things: show my sound design and compare my sounds to the one that is implemented in the game. I will first show the environmental clip first, starting with my scene, then the scene in the game, followed by the combat scene with the same order. I did not listen to the game audio prior to making my sounds, so that I will not get any bias or interpretation when making my own sound. The main difference in the environmental scene is the inclusion of music in the game. Music sets the tone for how the environment is perceived by the player. In the game, the music has an ethereal and mystical tone. Being tossed in a forest with no warning, a vast forest is there for the player to explore. My interpretation feels lonely and more empty. Nothing but you and the forest, you journey ahead using more of the environmental foley around the player to tell a story through sound. It's interesting how these interpretations are very similar, yet the different execution creates a very different undertone between the two scenes. The combat scenes are vastly different from each other. The game uses a more toyish tone for combat, which can be taken into account with the music and the VFX. Musical form takes an intro, A, B, A, and C, giving the music a full cycle while giving enough variation to not tire out the player with repetition. What is interesting is the use of cheering after every successful command input. Not something I would personally have went with, but it is their equivalent to making players feel good about their successful command inputs. None of the VFX used any form of small tunes, unlike my combat scene. This is likely to avoid any dissonance with the music and in turn focus purely on using VFX. Though there are sounds that do not play on moments where it feels like it should have some sound effects, like the 3 that shows up before many of the players' attacks. My scene had more realistic sounds compared to the toyish sound with the game. I leaned on the card UI and created paper-like flipping noises. It helped make the player feel like they are scrolling through the cards as they are navigating through the interface. Pulling them out, placing them away, selecting, and scrolling was something I was putting a lot of emphasis on. Attacks were dramatized to make a very impactful effect. I added some pitched beeps as a counter since I thought hearing some indicators would be a good way to slowly start the entry command for the player. Input commands were included with arpeggios, 2 different indicators based on how well the player timed their inputs. Rounding off my scene with music, there's a lot more energy with my music. The form consists of A, B, B, and a turnaround. With my music, there's a clear indication of where the song is at due to the clear difference between the two forms. I considered having a little bit of adaptive music based on who is on the offense. If the player is being attacked, the melody, harmony, and the kick drums would have been dropped, while the snare shots would have been replaced with the snare rims. Ultimately, I dropped the idea as that would take away the attention on the action command that the player needs to focus on. So I have used my research to find my sound design process and utilize it in a way where it will be applicable in the future. From this project, I have learned a lot from both myself and from research. The many intricacies in creating a design philosophy that I want to have while giving identity to a game. It was a struggle trying to figure out my goal in designing, as well as getting towards that process. There are many trials and errors to get through, but when the goal was set, getting towards that goal was another ladder to climb. And this project was something that accumulated my studies and passion all into one. I am satisfied with how this turned out, and I hope you enjoyed this video of me talking about video game sound design. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.